Ladies and gentlemen, too often we wait for the perfect time, the perfect resources, or the perfect opportunity before we move. But the truth is, the future doesn't start with what you don't have. It starts with what's already in your hand. Every great destiny begins with a seed, a gift, a small act of obedience. What looks ordinary to you is extraordinary in the eyes of God. The question is not, do you have enough? The real question is, will you use what you already have? Start with what's in your hands. Heaven will multiply it. My friend, many people are waiting for a miracle, waiting for a breakthrough, waiting for something big to fall out of the sky, when the truth is, the miracle has already begun. It doesn't come from the outside, it comes from within. You are already carrying something. You are already holding something. The question is not whether God has given you more. The question is, what are you doing with what He has already placed in your hands? Think about it. The widow had only a little oil, and that oil didn't look like much. But when she poured it, it multiplied. A young boy had just 5 loaves and 2 fish. It didn't look like enough, but when he gave it, thousands were fed. Moses had nothing but a rod in his hand, but when he stretched it out, a sea opened. What does that mean? It means what you are carrying may look small, it may look ordinary, it may even look insignificant, but in the hands of God, it becomes more than enough. So stop waiting for the perfect condition. Stop waiting for more money, more connections, more opportunities, because what you need is already with you. You have an idea, you have a gift, you have a voice, you have a seed, you have a skill, you have something that heaven is waiting for you to release. You may be saying, but it's not enough. And I tell you, you're right. By itself, it's not enough. But when heaven touches it, when God breathes on it, when the Spirit multiplies it, it becomes more than enough. That's why the principle is simple. God never asks for what you don't have. He only asks for what you already carry. He never begins with what is missing. He begins with what is present. You may think it's too little, but God calls it a seed. And the power of a seed is not in its size. The power of a seed is in its potential. A seed is always smaller than the harvest it produces. So don't despise what's in your hand. Don't ignore what's already inside of you. Don't bury the gift that you've been given. The truth is, many destinies die, not because of what people didn't have, but because they never used what they already had. What do you have? What's in your hand? What's in your house? What's in your spirit? Because the moment you release it, the moment you act on it, heaven will multiply it. That's the key. Heaven never multiplies what you hold back. It only multiplies what you release. So hear me today. The difference between where you are and where you want to be is not in waiting for something new. It's in activating what you already possess. You don't need to wait another year. You don't need to wait until everything is perfect. You don't need to wait until everyone believes in you. No, you need to take what's in your hand and place it in God's hand. Because when you do, the little becomes much, the ordinary becomes extraordinary, and the natural becomes supernatural. And here's the question you must wrestle with. If God has already given you something, if He has already placed a seed in your hand, then why are you still waiting? What if the breakthrough you are praying for is waiting on the action you are refusing to take? What if the door you're asking God to open is waiting on the seed you have not yet released? Because listen carefully, if you don't use what you already have, you will miss what's coming next. And what's coming next? Oh, you don't want to miss this, because the next principle will show you why your little is not just enough, but the very foundation of your future. Stop waiting for more. Begin with what you already carry. Too many people are living in delay, trapped in the illusion of tomorrow, saying, one day when I have more, one day when I get the right resources, One day when I find the right people, then I will start. But hear me, tomorrow is not promised. And the truth is, if you don't begin now with what you already have, you may never begin at all. Waiting for more has kept more people stuck than failure ever did. Look at history. Greatness never began with abundance. It always began with insufficiency. The dream always starts with something small. The vision always looks impossible at the beginning. Yet, it was those who dared to step out with the little they had that saw the increase. You don't need to have it all. You don't need to have it perfect. You don't need to have everyone's approval. You simply need to take the first step, because the principle of destiny is this: God blesses movement, not stagnation. He blesses faith in action, not fear in waiting. Remember the man at the pool of Bethesda, waiting 38 years for someone to put him in the water. His breakthrough was not in waiting for others, it was in responding to the word, "Get up, take your bed, and walk." How many years have you been waiting? How many opportunities have you let slip by because you kept saying, "I'm not ready yet"? What if the truth is you are more ready than you think? What if the future is not waiting for you to have more, but waiting for you to start with less? The danger of waiting is that it trains your mind to delay obedience, and delayed obedience is still disobedience. How many times has God whispered an idea, placed a gift in your heart, stirred a vision in your spirit, but instead of moving, you said, "I need more first"? And yet, nothing changes until you move. You see, faith is not proven in what you say you believe. Faith is proven in what you are willing to do with what you have. So I ask you today, what is in your hands right now? What is in your spirit right now? What gift, what skill, what idea, what passion, what seed has God already entrusted to you? Don't bury it waiting for perfect conditions, because perfect conditions will never come. Don't sit back waiting for more, because more only comes to those who use the little they already have. Increase is attracted to action, not to excuses. If you don't begin with what you have, you will never qualify for what you are asking for. If you don't start with the seed, you will never see the harvest. If you don't act on the vision in your spirit, you will never hold the reality in your hands. The future is waiting on your obedience, not on your resources. So hear me, you may feel unqualified, you may feel underprepared, you may feel unequipped, but that has never stopped God from using anyone before. The only thing that stops heaven from multiplying is when you refuse to begin. Because heaven can multiply effort, but it cannot multiply excuses. And the question you must ask yourself now is this: if you keep waiting, how much longer will you delay your destiny? If you keep saying, "One day," how many more years will pass you by? Because the next principle will show you why your gift, no matter how small, is already enough to unlock doors you thought were impossible. The seed in your hand unlocks the future in God's plan. Never underestimate the power of a seed. A seed doesn't look like much. It doesn't look like destiny. It doesn't look like greatness. But inside of it is everything required for a harvest. The problem is, too many people despise the seed because it doesn't look like the promise. But hear me today. The future is never handed to you in its final form. It always comes disguised as a seed. Think about it. The oak tree was once a seed. Nations were once just families. Great leaders were once children that no one paid attention to. Your future is wrapped inside the small thing that God has already placed in your hands. You may call it a talent. You may call it an idea. You may call it an opportunity, but God calls it a seed. And the power of a seed is not in what it looks like now. The power is in what it can become tomorrow. But here's the truth. Seeds are useless if they are never planted. A seed kept in your hand will never grow. It must be released into the ground. That means you must take the risk, you must release it, you must sow it. Many are holding on to their seed, waiting for a harvest, but harvest never comes until you let go. Could it be that what you've been praying for is waiting on what you've been holding back? Could it be that the multiplication you've been asking for is hidden inside the seed you've refused to plant? And notice something, God never gave anyone a harvest first. He always gave them a seed. To Adam, he said, be fruitful and multiply, but fruitfulness begins with a seed. To Abraham, he promised descendants, but he gave him Isaac first, a seed. Even salvation came as a child, a seed born in a manger, but carrying the future of the world. God's strategy has always been the same. The future is hidden in a seed. So stop despising the day of small beginnings. Stop saying, it's not enough. Stop saying, I don't have much, because all you need is a seed. And the seed you already carry is enough to unlock what's ahead. It may not look like much now, but once it's released, once it's planted, once it's surrendered, it will multiply in ways you could never imagine. You don't need to chase after someone else's harvest. You don't need to envy someone else's blessing. You simply need to identify your seed and plant it. Your seed is your gift. Your seed is your idea. Your seed is your time. Your seed is your obedience. And when you sow it faithfully, the future that God has prepared for you will begin to unfold. But here's the challenge. What if you keep your seed hidden? What if you never plant it? What if the greatness you were born to release never comes forth simply because you were afraid to let go? My friend, destiny doesn't respond to what you hold. It responds to what you sow. And this leads to a powerful truth. If the seed is the beginning, then what happens when God multiplies it? Oh, you don't want to miss this, because the next principle will show you why heaven never asks you for what you lack, only for what you already carry. God never asks for what you don't have. He only asks for what you already possess. That's the nature of divine purpose. He doesn't demand the impossible from you. He doesn't require what's outside your reach. He simply begins with what he has already entrusted to you. Think about it. When he called Moses, he didn't ask him for a sword or an army or wealth. He asked him, what's in your hand? And Moses replied, a rod. Just a rod. Something simple, something ordinary, something he had been holding for years. But when God touched it, that rod became a weapon of deliverance, a sign of authority, and a tool for miracles. You see, the problem with many of us is that we are waiting for something we don't have while ignoring the power of what we already do have. We cry for opportunities, we beg for resources, we ask for doors to open. But God says, what about the gift I already placed inside you? What about the strength I already gave you? What about the ideas that are already in your mind? The truth is, God is not waiting on someone else to give you more. He is waiting on you to recognize what you already carry. And notice, when the woman with the oil came to the prophet, she was desperate. She was in debt. She had nothing left, or so she thought. But the prophet asked her, what do you have in your house? She said, just a little oil, just a little. And that little became the key to her overflow. Isn't it amazing? The answer to her problem was already inside her house. Could it be the same with you? Could it be that the solution you're praying for is already within your reach? Could it be that God has already given you everything you need to take the next step? Here's the principle. God never holds you accountable for what you don't have. He only holds you responsible for what he's already given. You will never be judged for the talents you were not given, but you will be asked, what did you do with what I placed in your hands? And many people bury their gifts because they are waiting for more, but more never comes until you use what you already have. Heaven responds to action, not excuses. So the question today is, what's in your hand? What's in your house? What's in your spirit? What has God already entrusted to you? Because if you can't see the value of what you already carry, you'll never see the multiplication of what's coming. God always begins with what's in your possession, never with what's missing. And here is the challenge. What if your future is not waiting on something new, but waiting on your faithfulness with what you already have? What if the next level of your destiny is tied not to what you're asking for, but to what you've been ignoring? Because the next principle will reveal why your gift, no matter how hidden or unnoticed, is the very key that unlocks increase. Your gift is enough. Release it and watch God increase it. Too many people spend their lives comparing themselves to others, saying, if only I had their talent, if only I had their resources, if only I had their opportunities, then I could make a difference. But the truth is, you don't need what they have. You don't need to copy their path. You don't need to duplicate their journey. You only need to release what God has already placed inside of you. Because your gift is enough. Think about it. The boy with the 5 loaves and 2 fish didn't try to become a fisherman overnight. He didn't try to multiply bread by himself. He simply gave what he had. And when he released it, heaven increased it. That's the principle. What you hold on to stays the same, but what you release multiplies. You see, your gift will never grow while it's hidden. Your gift will never develop while it's buried. Your gift only increases when it's used, when it's shared, when it's poured out. And here's the danger. Too many of us are hiding our gift, waiting for a perfect time, waiting for someone to validate us, waiting for a stage, waiting for an audience. But you don't need a platform to release your gift. You don't need a crowd to use what you've been given. Start where you are, with who you are, with what you have. Because your gift may look small in your hands, but when you release it, it becomes powerful in the hands of God. Remember the parable of the talents. One man was given 5, another 2, another 1. The ones with 5 and 2 doubled theirs because they released what they had. But the man with 1 buried it and lost everything. Why? Because God increases what is released, but he takes away what is hidden. Could it be that the reason you have not seen increase is because you have not yet released what you've been given? Could it be that the breakthrough you're asking for is waiting for the gift you're still holding back? Don't underestimate your gift. Don't belittle your talent. Don't say, it's too small, it's not enough. No one will notice, because heaven notices. God sees. And increase always follows obedience. When you sing, when you write, when you serve, when you build, when you encourage, when you teach, when you create, when you pour out your gift, something supernatural happens. God breathes on it, and it multiplies beyond your imagination. So hear me today. You don't need to beg for more before you start. You don't need to wait for perfect timing. You don't need to compare yourself to anyone else. Your gift is enough. Release it and watch God increase it. But here's the real question. What happens when small steps of obedience become giant leaps of destiny? Because the next principle will show you how little steps, when placed in God's hands, turn into something greater than you ever imagined. Small steps become giant leaps when placed in God's hands. That's the mystery of faith, the power of obedience, the beauty of trust. Because when you look at your life, you may not feel like you're making progress. You may not feel like you're moving fast enough. You may not feel like what you're doing matters. But hear me, no step taken in obedience is ever wasted. No act of faith is ever ignored. No seed of effort is ever overlooked by heaven. Think about it. David didn't start as a king. He started as a shepherd, just watching sheep, writing songs, practicing his sling. Small steps. But those small steps prepared him for the giant, and that giant prepared him for the throne. Joseph didn't walk into a palace overnight. He started as a servant in Potiphar's house. than as a prisoner in a dungeon. Small steps. But every step was positioning him for influence in the palace. Even Jesus himself started in a manger, unnoticed, uncelebrated. But every step he took brought him closer to the cross, and the cross brought him closer to glory. Don't despise your small steps. Don't dismiss your small beginnings, because when you place them in God's hands, they are not wasted steps. They are ordered steps. You may feel like you're just moving inch by inch, but inch by inch in God's plan is better than a mile outside of His will. Every prayer you pray, every word you speak in faith, every action you take in obedience is building something you cannot yet see. And here's the truth. Giant leaps never begin as giant leaps. They begin as small steps. The leap is simply the accumulation of steps that were taken consistently, faithfully, persistently. That's why you must keep moving even when it feels slow, even when it looks insignificant, even when nobody notices. Because heaven notices, God sees, and He is multiplying every step you take. But let me warn you, when you refuse to move, when you wait for the giant leap before taking the small step, you delay your destiny. You can't skip steps. You can't bypass the process, because it is the process that shapes the promise. And sometimes the small step you are taking today is the very thing preparing you for the big breakthrough tomorrow. So the question is, what small step can you take today? What phone call can you make? What idea can you write down? What seed can you sow? What action can you take that looks small to man but is great in the eyes of God? Because when you take that step, no matter how small, God multiplies it. He breathes on it. He turns it into something greater than you imagined. And here's the challenge. What if the small step you refuse to take is the very leap you've been praying for? What if the breakthrough you are asking God to send is locked up in the obedience you are delaying? Because the next principle will show you why despising small beginnings can cost you the future that God has already prepared. Don't despise your beginning. God builds from there. Every great story starts small. Every great destiny begins in obscurity. Every great movement is born in silence. The danger is that many people look at their beginning and say, this is too little, this is too slow, this is too weak, and they give up before God has a chance to build. But hear me, nothing great ever starts great. Everything powerful begins in hidden places. Everything mighty is born in quiet spaces. Look at creation itself. The universe did not come into being in one instant. God spoke step by step, light first, then sky, then land, then vegetation, then animals, and finally man. He could have done it all in a moment, but He revealed a principle: greatness unfolds in stages. David began in the fields before the throne. Joseph began in the pit before the palace. Esther began as an orphan before becoming a queen. What does this tell you? Don't despise where you are, because God never wastes beginnings. Your beginning may not look glamorous. You may not have applause. You may not have recognition. You may not have resources. But beginnings are not about recognition. They are about foundation. God uses your beginning to shape you, to prepare you, to refine you, to strengthen you. And if you despise it, you may miss the very preparation that is necessary for your future. The seed must go into the ground before it becomes a tree. The child must learn to crawl before it walks. The student must learn the basics before mastering the advanced. Beginnings are proof that God has started something. And if He started it, He will finish it. That's why you must not give up in the beginning stage. But here's the danger. If you despise your beginning, you will delay your building. If you reject the process, you will prolong the promise. Many people quit too early, not because they were not called, not because they were not gifted, but because they could not value their beginning. Your beginning is the evidence that God is already at work, even if it looks small. So I ask you, what beginning are you despising right now? What job looks too small? What opportunity looks too insignificant? What gift looks too unnoticed? Could it be that God is using that very beginning as the foundation for your future? Could it be that what you're calling too small is exactly what heaven is calling the starting point? Don't despise your beginning. Celebrate it, nurture it, grow it. Because what looks like a small start today can become a mighty movement tomorrow. Never forget, the manger looked insignificant, but inside it was the Savior of the world. And here is the question you must carry. If God builds from beginnings, then what happens when you stay faithful with yours? Because the next principle will reveal how heaven responds when earth dares to act, showing you why heaven always moves when you do. Heaven responds to earth's action. Use what you have. Too many people are waiting for God to move, while God is waiting for them to act. You see, heaven has always partnered with earth. Miracles are always birthed when obedience meets divine power. Water didn't turn into wine until the servants filled the jars. The Red Sea didn't part until Moses stretched out his rod. The walls of Jericho didn't fall until the people marched around them. In every case, heaven responded after earth acted. And that's the principle. Faith is not just believing, faith is moving. Faith is not just speaking, faith is doing. You can pray all day, you can fast all night, but if you refuse to act on what God has already placed in your hand, nothing will change. Heaven is not waiting for your prayers alone. Heaven is waiting for your obedience. The moment you move, God moves. The moment you act, God responds. The moment you release what you have, heaven multiplies it. Remember Peter, when he was in the boat during the storm, Jesus told him, "Come." Now, Peter could have sat in the boat, waiting for the waves to calm, waiting for the storm to settle, waiting for the perfect conditions. But the miracle only happened when he stepped out on the water. It was the action of stepping out that unlocked the supernatural. What if the miracle you've been waiting for is not waiting on God, but waiting on you to take the first step? And think about the widow who fed Elijah. She said she had only enough flour and oil for one last meal. But Elijah told her, "Make me a cake first." And when she acted, when she gave, her oil never ran out, her flour never finished. The miracle was unlocked, not when she complained about her lack, but when she acted with what she had. Could it be that the lack in your life is waiting on the release of your obedience? Here's the truth. Heaven does not multiply what you keep, it multiplies what you use. If you bury your gift, it dies. If you hide your talent, it remains dormant. But when you use it, when you act, when you step out, when you release it, that's when heaven breathes on it. Action is the language of faith, and God always responds to faith. So the question is, what action do you need to take today? What step do you need to make? What gift do you need to release? Because until you move, nothing moves. Until you act, nothing shifts. Until you release, nothing multiplies. Heaven is waiting for you. And here's what you must remember. If heaven always responds to action, then what happens when God himself supplies the increase? Oh, you don't want to miss this, because the next principle will reveal why multiplication is never your responsibility, but always his. God supplies the increase, but you must release the seed. That is the principle of destiny. That is the law of faith. That is the pattern of heaven. You and I were never called to manufacture increase. We were called to trust the God who multiplies. Our responsibility is obedience. His responsibility is multiplication. You plant, he grows. You release, he expands. You sow, he supplies. That's why no man, no woman, no system, and no economy can limit you. Because increase is not determined by the world. Increase is determined by God. Look at the farmer. He does not stand in the field and command the seed to grow. He simply plants it, waters it, tends to it, and then he waits. Because only God can make the seed crack open. Only God can make the roots go down. Only God can make the harvest come up. The The same is true for your life. You cannot control the increase, but you can control the obedience. And obedience is always the trigger for multiplication. When the boy gave his lunch, it was not his job to feed the thousands. He simply gave what he had, and God supplied the increase. When the widow poured her oil, it was not her job to multiply the jars. She simply poured, and God supplied the increase. When Peter cast his net at the word of Jesus, it was not his job to fill the boat with fish. He simply obeyed, and God supplied the increase. Could it be, my friend, that the increase you are waiting for is on the other side of a seed you have not yet released? And here's the truth. You cannot see increase where you have not sown. You cannot expect harvest where you have not planted. Many cry for more, but they withhold their seed. Many pray for overflow, but they refuse to release. But heaven does not respond to need. Heaven responds to seed. That's why the moment you release, heaven moves. The moment you obey, God supplies. The moment you trust, he multiplies. So never forget, increase is not your burden, it is his promise. You don't have to manipulate, you don't have to strive, you don't have to beg. You simply have to plant in faith and trust the God who brings the harvest. Because the same God who begins a good work in you is the same God who will complete it. And so I ask you today, what seed is still in your hand? What gift, what idea, what opportunity, what act of obedience have you been holding back? Until you release it, you will never see increase. But the moment you trust God enough to let it go, he will show you that your little becomes much, your ordinary becomes extraordinary, and your natural becomes supernatural. So I leave you with this. Don't wait for tomorrow. Start today. Don't hold back what heaven is asking for. Release it. Don't fear the size of your seed, because the harvest is not in your hand. The harvest is in his. You are not responsible for the increase. You are only responsible for obedience. If you trust him with your seed, he will trust you with his harvest. If you give him your little, he will show you his abundance. If you release what you carry, he will prove that he is still the God who multiplies, still the God who supplies, and still the God who never fails.